You suffered a couple of court losses, Mr. President, and J.D. Vance said judges aren't allowed to control the executive power. What's your take on that?
Well, we're going to see what happens. We have a long way to go, and we're talking about fraud, waste, abuse, and when a president can't look for fraud and waste and abuse, we don't have a country anymore. So we're very disappointed with the judges that would make such a ruling, but we have a long way to go. We have to find all of the fraud that's going on. We have tremendous fraud, tremendous waste, and tremendous abuse, and theft, by the way. And the day you're not allowed to look for theft and fraud, etc., then we don't have much of a country. So no judge should frankly be allowed to make that kind of a decision. It's a disgrace.
To say that Donald Trump hasn't been hyper-focused on his campaign, promises to lower the cost of groceries, gas, rent, would be the understatement of the century. Donald Trump hasn't given any focus to those problems. In fact, he has done the opposite. He has made them worse with his disastrous policy and all of his failures. Failures that Americans who voted for Trump are starting to notice, and they're starting to feel betrayed. And that, along with the regular rage that Donald Trump experiences every day, led him to lash out a little bit at one of his biggest enemies for some reason at the Super Bowl, Taylor Swift. Yes, Donald Trump, an almost 80-year-old man, decided he would take the Truth Social and attack Taylor Swift, and it is backfiring. And we are going to get into that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me now. Before we get into it, Donald Trump said at the Super Bowl, I want to get into a bit of a meltdown he had before, because it kind of shows the rage that he was starting the night with.
You suffered a couple of court losses, Mr. President, and J.D. Vance said judges aren't allowed to control the executive power. What's your take on that?
But we're going to see what happens. We have a long way to go, and we're talking about fraud, waste, abuse, and when a president can't look for fraud and waste and abuse, we don't have a country anymore. So we're very disappointed with the judges that would make such a ruling, but we have a long way to go. We have to find all of the fraud that's going on. We have tremendous fraud, tremendous waste, and tremendous abuse, and theft, by the way. And the day you're not allowed to look for theft and fraud, etc., then we don't have much of a country. So no judge should frankly be allowed to make that kind of a decision. It's a disgrace.
Question about the Super Bowl. You're going to the game. One of the big things that you've done so far in office is cracking down on DEI. I saw that the NFL commissioner said, I think this week, that they're happy with their diversity program. What's your take on that? Would you like to see any changes there?
I don't know what the diversity program is. To be honest, I know Roger very well. I'd have to look at what he said he's happy with. He was happy also with the flag and a lot of other things that didn't work out too well. We'll have to see what he was happy with. But right now, that's, you know what the law is. The law is the law, and it changed, and it's been backed up by the U.S. Supreme Court. We're making our country larger. We're making our country stronger. And in the case of Canada, if this should happen, I don't know how they can do it without us, because without the U.S., Canada really doesn't have a country. They do almost all of their business with us. And if we say we want our cars to be made in Detroit, with a stroke of a pen, I can do that. And other things in addition to that would not allow Canada to be a viable country.
You said you didn't want to honor first responders today, but you pardoned hundreds of people who assaulted first responders. Why did you do that?
Who?
You were going to meet with first responders today, but you pardoned people who assaulted first responders.
No, I pardoned people that were assaulted themselves. They were assaulted by our government. I pardoned J6 people who were assaulted by our government. That's who assaulted, and they were treated unfairly. There's never been a group of people in this country, outside of maybe one instance that I can think of, but I won't get into it, that were treated more horribly than the people of J6. So, no, I didn't assault. They didn't assault. They were assaulted. And what I did was a great thing for humanity. They were treated very, very unfairly. There's never been an incident like it.
Why does Elon's financial disclosure remain secret?
Because nobody's looking at that. We're looking at all the corruption that's taken place. I mean, his financial disclosure is largely the number of shares that he's got in very public companies, and that's not secret at all. If you read that, you'll see a lot. I mean, he talks about his whole thing. I read one where it really gave a very good history of him, but basically it's a number of shares times a certain stock price.
So why is that not public?
It is public. All you have to do is read it.
Why do you want to be chairman of the Kennedy Center Board?
Because I want to make sure it runs properly. We don't need woke at the Kennedy Center. We don't need, some of the shows were terrible. They're a disgrace that they were even put on. So I'll be there until such time as it gets to be running right.
Have you seen any shows there? How do you know they're
I
terrible?
didn't go. No, I got reports it was so bad I didn't want to go. There was nothing I wanted to see. Thank you very much, everybody.
This is a man who promised, and of course, when he promised, he was lying. But to lower cost, I don't think he has said the word groceries since being elected president. He does not care. What he does care about is attacking Canada, invading Panama, his culture, wars, and of course, clearly, Taylor Swift. So someone who made Donald Trump so furious by telling people to register to vote, encouraging civic engagement throughout her career with her gigantic platform, that was the big affront to Donald Trump clearly. And it's why he made these two ridiculous posts last night. Trump wrote the only one that had a tougher night than the Kansas City Chiefs was Taylor Swift. She got booed out of the stadium. MAGA is very unforgiving. And it was noted that Donald Trump reposted a video of Taylor Swift getting booed at the Super Bowl on his Truth Social profile. The President of the United States isn't focused on you. He's focused on his internet beef with the biggest pop star in the world because she told people to go vote, because she helped people register to vote. It is mind-boggling every single day that that is his focus. And Americans are saint to realize we saw recent polling that said over 67% of Americans said Donald Trump wasn't doing nearly enough to address cost. And now he's making a big spectacle, which will make a lot of news over his attack against Taylor Swift. Soon people like Donald Trump just bringing attention to the fact that he's doing everything but what he promised. And it's the reason Democrats are fighting back so much harder now than they certainly did at the beginning of his term, because that first week, we did not get nearly the pushback we needed. But now, Democrats are starting to, and someone who was laying out that plan was Senator Cory Booker, right here.
Well, again, I think the plan right now is working in 4 parts. One is a legal strategy to stop him from violating the separation of powers, from violating our civil service laws, civil rights laws, and we're winning. We see 41 cases being taken, 10 of them last week, 12 of them, were successful in stopping some of his illegal actions. The next is a legislative and oversight effort to really try to expose it, not to treat this as Democrat versus Republican, right or left, but really right or wrong, and continue to try to use our positions procedurally as well as legislatively to stop what he's doing. And then finally, perhaps most importantly, because all of us have to have a role, from the media to everyday citizens, which is shining a light on the dark corners of what they're doing and how it is actually endangering Americans' lives, is threatening to raise the cost of people's everyday goods and inflation and more. We've been successful in the past, from turning up the heat on him to stopping him from tearing away health care in his first administration, to even when he did one of those awful illegal acts of trying to stop government funding of our first responders, our veterans, our meal programs. The outrage of Americans actually stopped them from what they were doing, and then our legal strategy further put a bar on their ability to stop sourcing and funding vital resources for communities.
The New York Times reported that when pushed by fellow Democrats to do more to stop Trump, the Democratic Senate leader Chuck Schumer pointed in part to your leadership, what you're doing on social media and the messaging there. David Corn, who is a prominent journalist on the left, described your strategy as bringing a teaspoon to a gunfight. And he added, this is not how a party battling for its survival and the survival of the nations behave. What do you say to that?
Again, I've been blown away by what I'm seeing by everyday citizens joining together and beginning to shine a much better light on what's happening. Take USAID and the efforts last week to show that what the Trump administration has done is make Americans less safe from diseases like Ebola or treatment-resistant tuberculosis, taking away scientists on the front line of fighting these infectious diseases, because we know infectious diseases anywhere are a threat to human safety everywhere. And so a lot of the things that Trump is doing, that some of the biggest officials in our state, like remember Secretary Mattis, his defense secretary, saying very bluntly, if you cut these kind of programs in the State Department, buy me more bullets, because it's going to mean that we're going to use military more. By shining a light on these things, by elevating, as we've seen online this past week, literally hundreds of millions of shares and likes exposing what's going on, this is giving us more strength in actually stopping him from doing what he's doing.
Republicans will almost certainly need Democrats to help keep the government open past March 14th. Are you willing to use the prospect of a government shutdown or even a default on the nation's debt as leverage to force some Trump concessions?
Look, the Republican Party has shown year after year that they're the party of shutdowns, they're the party of government chaos, they're the party that can't even within their own ranks pass these funding bills. And that's why, as you said, they're going to need us. What we are the party of is a party of protecting residents, protecting veterans, protecting first responders, protecting American safety from his illegal actions like shutting down FEMA. I mean, just think about that for a second. Or shutting down something like NOAA in a time of outrageous weather patterns that are causing flooding and more hurricanes. They are dismantling the protections of Americans' safety. So we're not looking to shut down the government. We're looking actually to protect people. And we're going to stand up against the kind of things that Donald Trump is doing that are hurting Americans, making us less safe and raising costs.
Senator, tactically, though, I know you're trying to shine a light on it. You're here doing this interview. You're working it online. But when it comes to the tools in your toolbox, there aren't a lot of them. One of them is to try to stop the government funding, to try to do maybe even default on the debt, as I said, or at least force that if the Republicans don't change course. Is that the strategy?
Let me just put it pointedly. The strategy is to do whatever we can to stop Donald Trump from hurting Americans, from making us less safe, less secure, and from raising our costs. We will look at every single tool in our toolbox, as we've done this last week, to make sure that we stop him from hurting people. At the end of the day, Donald Trump has promised America, I will bring down your costs and I'll make you safer. He clearly is doing the opposite. In addition to that, he's opening the floodgates for corruption in our system, from getting rid of inspector generals who have a track record under Democrat and Republican presidents of saving Americans billions of dollars from waste, fraud, and abuse, to letting Elon Musk, one of our biggest government contractors, one of our biggest military contractors, have access to America's most personal information, from your grandparents' medical information all the way down to people's social security information and other things. This is an astonishing allowance of corruption and abuse and violations of people's privacy and other most sacrosanct values. We are in a crisis right now, and Democrats will use every tool possible to protect Americans, to drive down costs, to make us safer. These are the very opposite that Donald Trump is doing to Americans right now.
We need so much more fight right now. Every single day, we need to be communicating our message and pushing back in every way we possibly can. And it is certainly what we are going to be doing on this show every day. If you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around at the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.